the Action Network's YouTube stream, and we are talking about the All-Star Game in Major League Baseball, the Midsummer Classic. I've got my guys Sean Zerillo and BJ Cunningham to discuss it with me. We have the Home Run Derby, but the true Midsummer Classic is tonight. We got the All-Stars of the American League and the National League getting it going. The National League is a slight favorite tonight with Clayton Kershaw on the bump. 7.5 is the total. Let's get right into it. Sean, I mean, how do you see this All-Star game playing out?
Yeah, so National League slight favorite for the full game. You can get the American League at plus money. And it's actually more tilted towards the National League for the first 5 innings. I saw about minus 115 for the NL as opposed to minus 110 for the full game. So I actually like the American League in the first half. I view Shane McClanahan as a better starting pitcher than Clayton Kershaw. View the American League starting lineup as better than the National League. NL superior defensively, but the NL a better hitting, or the AL a better hitting lineup. And then when you get to the second half of the game, once these reserves start coming in, I actually prefer or view the NL backups as comparable to their starting lineup. And I think there's a drop-off in the American League lineup. In addition, I think the NL has better relievers than the American League does. Not necessarily going to get the relievers pitching in the second half of the game and the starters all front-loaded in the first half of the game. But I think that lineup differential points towards the NL in the second half. The way I projected it out, have the American League as minus 114 favorites for the first 5 innings. Have the National League as minus 101 favorites for the full game. So compared to that first 5 line, I bet the American League at minus 105. I wouldn't go past that number. But in terms of the live game betting, I would look to take the National League live once you start seeing those starting lineups get removed from the game, usually after 2 plate appearances, maybe 3 plate appearances for some batters. But roughly after the first 5 innings, I'm going to look to coming live on the National League. I'm also going to look to live bet the total. You've seen it come down from 8 to 7.5.
Yeah.
Odd situation here. So they're going to decide this with a home run derby if it's tied after 9 innings, which is cool. Mm-hmm. But they haven't said whether they're going to count a run for the team that wins the home run derby. So you're basically betting an under whatever, under 8, under 7.5 for the 9 innings of the game. I'm assuming, because they said that they're going to declare a winner for whoever wins the home run derby. And I would favor the NL in that scenario, by the way, based on the 3 players they chose. But you could bet the under 8 and conceivably get a push even as this goes 4-4 and goes to a home run derby after 9 innings, because I don't think that they're going to declare a run for the team who wins. Up in the air
really
at this point.
Right? Yeah. So, I mean, I think about like the NBA All-Star Game when they do like the weird ending, and you have to honestly understand it when you're trying to bet a live total, right? Because sometimes it's right there, and I don't know, how is this going to be in the box score? If you bet a home run prop, will the guy, will like Julio Rodriguez, because he hits one in the extra innings, will that count? We have no idea. And we also usually think about live betting once extra innings happens with the ghost runner. It's a completely different context, right, Sean?
Absolutely. And there's not going to be a ghost runner here. So you don't have to worry about a total landing on an odd number as much as you normally would. I think if you see that under 8 live later in the game, if it's still 3-3, I would go ahead and take it, because I assume you're going to get that push probability on 8. I would assume those home run props, by the way, on players would not count for the home run derby and extra innings. But who knows? It's up to MLB how they want to determine it. One thing I would like to note, though, totals for the All-Star game. The past 15, 12-3 to the under. And if you had set every total at 7.5, you'd still be 10-5 to the under, which is right where the total is for tonight. Lower scoring environment at Dodger Stadium. But basically, the All-Star game tends to be lower scoring because you get so many pitchers coming in, getting optimal matchups, and getting out of the game as quickly as possible. So the last 15 games, the average run scoring has been 7.8 or 6.8 runs, mostly going under that 7. And on top of that, only 1 game has even gone over 10 runs. So low scoring game, competitive game. Would look to take the plus 1.5s live if you can see them on either side, and definitely would look to take the unders live if it ends up creeping up with some early scoring.
Hey, BJ, what about you? I like a lot of the points Sean was making, especially the fact that we are going to have the best arms in the world coming in and being able to give max effort for like 4 or 5 batters. How do you see this game? Because for me, I'm always thinking, when are the substitutions going to be made? We hear about all these all-star leading vote getters, but when the chips are down with a man on base and 1 out in the 8th inning, those aren't the guys that are going to be up to bat.
Right. So I agree with Sean and his analysis with this. So I'm actually going to take something a little different, but kind of along the same lines is the first 5 innings. I'm going to go first 3 innings at -110, just because I feel like I know what's going to happen for those first 3 innings. So we know Shane McClanahan starting for the AL. We know Clayton Kershaw starting for the NL. Beyond that, I would assume that Sandy Alcantara is going to come in for the 2nd inning for the NL. And then after that, it's probably going to be Tony Gonsolin or Joe Musgrove. For the AL, Shohei Ohtani's not going to pitch in this game. He wants to start on Friday against the Braves. So the next reasonable choices beyond that for the AL are Alek Manoah and Nestor Cortez. So if I know those are going to be the 3 starting pitchers for each league, I give the AL pretty decent edge in those. If you take the average expected ERA, there's AL's at 2.51, NL at 2.68. If you look at xFIP, AL 2.71, NL 3.16. So a pretty significant edge there for the American League. And also for those first 3 innings, we know who the starting lineup is going to be. We don't know what order they're going to hit in, but we at least know who is going to start for the AL and the NL. And we assume that they're going to be in there for at least the first 3 innings, for at least 1, maybe 2 plate appearances, like Sean already said. Well, if that's the case, the AL has a pretty slight edge here for in terms of their starting lineup as compared to the NL. Now, as Sean will tell you later, the NL's bench is a lot better than the AL's. But just for those first 3 innings, and we're getting a pretty similar price to that we have for the first 5 innings, I like the price in the American League for the first 3 innings at -110, just so I can take all of that randomness, substitution, anything out of
Right.
Potentially the handicap in this game.
Yeah, we're trying to eliminate as many variables as possible in an all-star game. That's very tough once you go beyond, say, the 2nd inning. But let's get into some of the props, okay? Because everybody loves to bet the props. We could bet the side, we could bet the total, but there is no shortage of prop bets for the all-star game as well. We know about MVPs. We know about specific plate appearances. We know about home runs and hits. Sean, what are some of the props you might be on tonight in the Midsummer Classic? Yes, Sean, I think we're having something there. We can't quite hear your amazing analysis, but we will give you another chance. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to let BJ take the mic now and let me see what props he wants. And then we'll go right back to you, Sean, because I know everybody wants to get paid on your props. We'll just let BJ go first. So what are some of the props you're looking at tonight, BJ?
Yeah, one of my favorite props is highest scoring inning, NL, which is currently at -120. You can find that on DraftKings. The analysis here is that the AL bullpen is actually pretty bad comparatively to the National League. So if we take the AL relievers, the guys we think are going to be in for at least the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th inning potentially, they're about a half a run worse comparatively to that of the National League. So what you have is a situation where I think that there's some blow up potential here in the later innings, where I think the National League could potentially put 2-3 runs on the board. And another one I really like in terms of MVP is Austin Riley at 80-1. Now, he's a bench guy. He's going to be coming off the bench behind, I can't remember who the 3rd baseman starting for the National League off the top of my head is, but Machado, excuse me. Yeah. But Austin Riley, top 10 guy in terms of expected weighted on base average, 3rd in the National League in home runs, already hit 27 on the year. And like I already mentioned, the AL has a pretty significant drop-off once you get past the first 4 or 5 guys. So the guys coming off the bench for the National League are going to have great opportunities. If this is a low-scoring game with potentially guys on base hitting maybe a bases-clearing double, a 2 or 3 run home run, that potentially ends up being the difference in the game. So at a price of 80-1, I love Austin Riley. And really, I love any type of long shots in this game, especially guys coming off the bench, because you're going to get some of the lower tier guys rather than the Kershaws, the McClanahans, the Alcantaras like you would in the beginning of the game.
No, I absolutely agree. And I always say, we're not just giving you a fish, we're teaching you how to fish here on the Action Network. And one of the points BJ is making is great, okay? That key hit, okay, that game-winning RBI late in the game is going to be by a non-starter. So getting some of those bench guys that may be up in that critical situation, a Tim Anderson comes to mind for me potentially, could actually be someone that you want to hit. So Sean, now let's get back to you, because everybody wants to get paid on your props. Are you following some of the same approach or mindset as BJ?
I am. Let's talk about some bench players first, because they actually do win the MVP award more often than you might think.
Yes,
there's actually been 6 of them going back to 2006. Alex Bregman do it in 2018, Robbie Cano in 2017. And between 2006 and 2010, they actually won 4 of the 5. And you look at a lot of them, it's really, as you said, Dane, just coming in off of the bench, getting one key hit in a key spot, driving in a couple of runs. And that's all they need to do to win the MVP award. You even can just go 1 for 2, get the big hit in the big spot, driving the winning run, and that's it. So the guy that I like at 100 to 1 is Luis Arraez, second in on base percentage this year, first in batting average. If I look at a guy who's going to get the optimal matchup from his manager coming in against a right-handed pitcher with a couple of guys on base, Arraez at 100 to 1 is the guy for me. He is completely automatic against right-handed pitching. Not as great against lefties, but Arraez never strikes out, puts every ball in play, tough at bats for every pitcher. I love Luis Arraez as a hitter. I think he's one of the most underrated hitters in baseball, and people will start to take notice if he wins a batting title at the end of the year. The other player I like for MVP is Clayton Kershaw. Now, normally I wouldn't look to better pitcher for MVP. There have been just 4 of them since the mid-1980s. You start with Roger Clemens winning in Houston, but the 3 since then all won MVPs in their home state. Mariano Rivera gifted one in 2013 at Citi Field. Shane Bieber gifted one in 2019 where he only threw an inning and struck out 2 batters in Cleveland. And then on top of that, you had Pedro Martinez in 1999, and that was the one deserved one because he struck out the big batters he faced. Pedro absolutely was deserving that award, but it did take place in Boston. Just a little bump to him in there as well. But Clayton Kershaw getting the start for the NL over Sandy Alcantara, I think that's enough to bet him here. If you can find it, not all the books offering it, give him a little message, shoot him a little DM, ask, are you going to put Clayton Kershaw odds up? Because some books are and some books are not. But Clayton Kershaw, if you can get around 30 to 1 or better, I think he's worth a poke for MVP, considering he's getting the start in his home park. This could be a lifetime achievement award for him. Also getting to face Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani at the beginning of that order. So if he's able to strike out a couple of those guys, even if he goes the second inning, he gets 2 shutdown innings, I think Clayton Kershaw is absolutely going to be in line for the MVP. My favorite game prop, though, goes back to my handicap for the game. Very simple. You could bet a double chance prop instead of betting the American League first 5 and betting the NL Live after 5 innings. Just bet the double chance prop. American League first half, National League second half, or you could do tie in the first half, National League second half. Those are 10 to 1 and 8 to 1 respectively at PointsBet. Aligns with my game handicap. National League's favored for the full game. American League favored for the first 5 innings. So that double chance prop, those 2 double chance props, how I prefer to bet the game if you're betting it pregame.
It's interesting, Sean. You talk about how Clayton Kershaw already kind of got gifted the start here, where guys like Gonsolin or Alcantara maybe had better first half numbers, but maybe the play is to assume that he's going to get another gift in the form of an MVP award. If you're not on that kind of narrative-based award, then listening to these guys, it seems like you should pick a bench position player who you think could be in that exact right spot in a 3-2 game in the 8th inning. That's where the game will be won. That may be where the MVP is truly crowned in the Midsummer Classic. But it's not just a game. It's also kind of a benchmark in the season, right? We know there's been more than 81 games played, but the second half is on the horizon. So let's turn the page and look forward a little bit. BJ, I'll start with you. What are kind of your favorite bets here in the futures markets in the second half? Do you think like the Braves can catch the Mets? Do you think someone's going to catch the Twins? Who wins the NL Central? What are you looking for in the futures markets here for the second half, BJ?
Yeah, there's one that really stands out to me right now, and it's the Guardians to win the AL Central at plus 450. You know, if you look at FanGraphs and their projections, they have them around 21%. So plus 450 is around 18, 19%. So you're getting about 3% of value on the Guardians. It's a team that, you know, they obviously started out very hot to begin the season. They have a top 10 bullpen. They have 2 pretty good starters. Obviously, Shane Bieber is a top end starter along with Tristan McKenzie, has been pitching really well as of lately. After that, it kind of drops off. But you also have a lineup that is top half of the Major League Baseball and a lot of the expected metrics. You had they're a lineup that has been performing better than the White Sox, not better than the Twins, but the Twins do have some bullpen question marks, and honestly, some question marks in their starting rotation as well. So the Guardians are trailing the Twins by 2 games right now at a price of plus 450, essentially saying that you want essentially them a 20% chance or more to actually win the division. Well, you're getting better odds than that. So I like the Guardians at plus 450 to win the Central right now, come back and overtake the Twins.
Hey, Sean, what about you when we kind of look forward in terms of some of the futures markets? Is there anything out there that you like? And with the trading deadline on the horizon, would you ever take a position kind of anticipating or assuming some of the moves that may be made, like maybe banking on a team you think might land the home run derby champion in the next 3 weeks, for example? Or do you look at the rosters only as they are currently constructed? What do you like in the second half?
No, I think you have to be willing to take a look at who you expect to add pieces at the deadline, see where teams have needs and where they might be able to fill holes, because there's teams that are more aggressive, like Jerry Dipoto with the Mariners, who are going to try to fill those holes. Teams who have more money, more resources, like the Mets and the Braves. The Braves, the second richest team in baseball, by the way. That kind of goes overlooked at times. The Blue Jays up there as well. I believe they're third. So teams like that are certainly going to add pieces at the deadline. I actually agree with BJ's assessment on the Guardians. I know we're going to talk about the AL Central in a bit, but we may as well just get it out of the way now. That Fangraphs projection has them at about plus 390. You can get plus 475 in the Guardians. I have a preseason position on the Twins. If I didn't, I would absolutely be looking to jump in on Cleveland right now. My favorite future, though, is something I've been talking about for weeks, and it is the Atlanta Braves, who I expect may add some bullpen pieces at the deadline. But this team is completely set up to dominate in the playoffs like they did last year. Don't have Ozzy Albies right now, but he'll be back in time for the playoffs. Didn't have Ronald Acuna Jr. for that playoff run last year. They do have him this year. I've talked about this future at length. I bet the NL pennant odds around plus 700 a few weeks ago. Those odds are down to plus 450. Their World Series number is down to plus 900. I still think there's value on both of those numbers. Fangraphs would put those at plus 375 for the pennant and plus 670 for the World Series, respectively. There's the most optimistic divisional projection on them is around plus 185. So I don't think there's any value in the NL East divisional market, but absolutely would be looking to take Braves pennant and World Series futures still at this point. They're going to add pieces at the deadline, as I said. And on top of that, their rotation is in such better shape than it was last year. Max Fried's taken a step forward. Charlie Morton, status quo, after looking like he'd taken a step back earlier in the year, has been phenomenal of late. And as I will keep mentioning, Kyle Wright and Spencer Strider have broken out for this team, replacing Huascar Noah and Ian Anderson, who started games 3 and 4 of their playoff series last year with better starting pitchers. Strider has been one of the best pitchers in baseball this season. Going to ease off of him in the second half and make sure he's fully rested for the playoffs. But top to bottom, I think this Braves team is more complete than they were last year. Love their pennant futures odds. Love their World Series futures odds. I definitely think they could repeat as a champion. And they've been one of the most disrespected champions in some time. So the Braves may still be the best team in the National League. Do not overlook them.
No, I think some of their young arms look absolutely amazing. And think about Atlanta, after their World Series last year, if you look back, some of the moves they made at the trading deadline, specifically like 2 or 3 outfield bats that really came up big for them come October, including the World Series MVP. So we talked a little bit about teams for the second half, divisions, pennant, World Series futures even. BJ, what about some player awards? I mean, we got Cy Youngs, we got MVPs, we got rookies of the year still to be decided. And I know at least in the AL MVP market, Shohei Ohtani just recently passed Aaron Judge to become the favorite in that market. What are you looking at when it comes to some of the player awards?
Yeah, one thing that kind of stood out to me, a stat leader, it's most strikeouts in Major League Baseball. Currently, Dylan Cease is way ahead of everybody else right now. But one guy that kind of caught my eye was Carlos Rodon of the Giants. He has about the 5th best K per 9 rate. He's only pitched 105 innings, which is the lowest among all the 6 or 7 guys that are above him. So he's sitting at a price of around 16-1 right now. If he can make up those type of innings, especially over the second half of the season, given that K per 9 rate, I do think he has a pretty decent shot to catch, whether it be Cease or Garrett Cole or whoever. And if you look at the second half projections, he's about 5th on the list in terms of whether you look at Zips or Steamer, whatever it is for rest of season. So at 16-1, I think that is a pretty decent price on Rodon, who has been just basically a strikeout king for the Giants this year.
All right, fair enough. What about you, Sean? I know you got some ideas here on some of these player markets, and you were talking about gifting the start to Clayton Kershaw. You're not even backing Alcantara in the NL Cy Young market. Is that because the odds are too short?
Too short at this point. I have Sandy preseason at 25-1, so I would not touch him at this point. But actually, you look at the updated projections. I looked a few weeks ago. He wasn't in the top 3 really for WAR projections. Now he's first by 1 and second by another. So Sandy should be the favorite at this point. I think he's pitched well enough that he deserves to be. But basically, my analysis for all player awards is going to come down to who's near the top of the end of season WAR projections, wins above replacement, and who's still getting bucketed in that 15 to 25 to 1 range when I expect them to finish as a top 3 to 5 player in wins above replacement. You go back through history, 14 of the past 20 Rookie of the Year winners finished atop their league in WAR, so wins above replacement leader. For MVP, 22 of the past 24 winners finished in the top 3, Cy Young, 10 of the past 12. So you need to finish in that top 3 in order to get enough votes. There's a bunch of guys in each league who I think fit that criteria. I know BJ just talked about Carlos Rodon, always going to have injury concerns with him. But Aaron Nola in the National League Cy Young, projected to finish second and third by 2 different systems. You can get him at 35 to 1 for the NL Cy Young. AL Cy Young, Kevin Gausman is your projected WAR leader by 2 different systems. You can get him at 17 to 1. American League MVP, yes, Judge and Ohtani are probably ahead of the rest of the field right now. Ohtani should be the favorite considering you add his pitching and hitting WAR together and you get him over 8 wins above replacement, Judge around 7.5. But Jose Ramirez is always going to be a top 3 guy in wins above replacement projections. I believe he's actually the leader in WAR over the past 3 or 4 years in the AL. Constantly disrespected. Can get him at 25 to 1. Both Judge and Ohtani get injured. Ramirez is probably the front runner. Then in the National League, I think Nolan Arenado actually is a better case than Paul Goldschmidt at this point. You factor in his defense, he is the projected WAR leader by both Zips and Steamer in the National League, ahead of Machado, ahead of Goldschmidt. So Arenado sitting there, juicy plus number. Jose Ramirez, same range. And then Gausman and Aaron Nola, respectively, all in that 15 to 35 to 1 range, as I mentioned, all projected to finish in the top 3 amongst pitchers and hitters in their league in wins above replacement.
Zerillo in love with the Guardians these days. The Guardians in the division, Jose Ramirez potentially as an MVP candidate. Now, remember, you're going to be able to hear these guys on Tuesdays and Fridays during the second half of the season with playoff pitch. Payoff pitch. Some of the things they're going to be talking about is, will the Seattle Mariners ever lose a game again? What do you guys think about the 14 now in a row for Seattle? And they were a 90-win team last year. I mean, BJ, do you think they have what it takes to still be playing meaningful games into September and potentially in October as well?
No, I've been saying no for a long time on the Mariners. And I'm going to keep saying no, and I'm probably going to end up being wrong. But this team, I mean, 14 wins. This team was way below 500. They rattled off 14 wins. But if you look at last year, I mean, that Mariners team last year, they overperformed. Looking at Pythagorean record, they overperformed by about over 10 wins. And they're doing the same kind of thing this year. You know, rest of season projections has them, Fangraphs has them dead on at around 86 wins. So that's barely going to get them into the wild card. So yes, they could make the playoffs given they have an extra wild card spot now in the AL, and the fact that they are in an easier division than the AL East, where the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, the Rays basically are running a gauntlet week in and week out. And, you know, we obviously look at the AL Central, and it's basically going to be who wins that type of division. So yes, the Mariners could make the playoffs, but are they going to be a 90-win team? Are they going to hit their win total over 83.5? I mean, they're projected to do it right now, but at some point, math has to catch up to this team, and negative regression has to hit them. So I do think it's going to hopefully be over the second half, but I've been wrong about the Mariners again, and again. So I guess I'll continue being wrong about them.
All right, he's going to keep the streak going and continue to ride the fading Seattle train on some level. Sean, what about you? I mean, BJ mentioned that American League Central. I know you want to continue to talk about that AL Central. You got Minnesota, you got Chicago. We know you like Cleveland. How do you think these teams get to the finish line, and who do you think is built better for playoff baseball?
White Sox probably built best for the playoffs. The Twins definitely need to add a starting pitcher. I would expect them to try to get Frankie Montas or Luis Castillo at some point. That bullpen has some major holes in it, but I think the White Sox, if they get to October, they have the best chance of having success. Cleveland, just such an annoying team to play against because they don't strike out at all. So when you get into a 3-game series with them, they can grind down your starters, get into your bullpen, work the bullpen, make you throw a lot of pitches. Cleveland is very, very annoying to play against, very annoying to bet against. Do not bet strikeout props against them. I do want to comment on the Mariners, though, because I am starting to come around on this team a little bit. One of my biggest preseason win total bets was their under 86.5. Looked great in April when they started below 500. This team overachieved by 14 wins last year. 76 Pythagorean wins, ended up winning 90 games. This year, 51 wins, 51 Pythagorean wins. So they've actually justified how well they have played to a degree. Projected end of season win projections, 86 per Fangraphs and 87 per Pacoda. I think that they are better than Tampa. I think that they're better than Boston probably. Their bullpen is tremendous. You look at the top end of their rotation, they can compete. They need to fill those holes at the bottom of the rotation with Marco Gonzalez and Chris Flexen. They probably need to add a hitter to their lineup, but they have Kyle Lewis coming back from the IL soon. I think I'm coming around on the Mariners a little bit. I just don't know if there's any value in betting their futures at this point. If you got in before that win streak, you were probably on the right side of things. But even their most optimistic projection right now, per Fangraphs, 2.7% to win the World Series. That's around 3,600. And then for their pennant odds, it's right around 20-1. And the best available number that you can get is roughly 20-1. I think the projection is closer to 19-1. So not a big edge on the Mariners there, but I am coming around on this team. Their bullpen is tremendous. They have a lot of live arms in it. And if they get a lead, they're very tough to overcome late in games.
All right, so there you have it. This has been some thoughts on tonight's Major League Baseball All-Star Game, some of the props you could play, some of the bench players that are going to come in late and truly make a difference, and some thoughts both in terms of teams and players for the second half of the season. Remember, you can catch these two guys, Sean Zerillo and BJ Cunningham, on Payoff Pitch on Tuesdays and Fridays. And be sure to download the Action Network app, subscribe to the Action Network YouTube channel to get all sorts of good information, unless, of course, you're allergic to money. That'll do it for us today. Enjoy the All-Star